Hello everyone. So this video is a little bit different than usual. I was recently contacted by the National Post, which is a big newspaper up here in Canada, and they asked me if I would like to make a few videos for their website. So this is going to be something that maybe you'll see more of from me in the next couple of weeks and months. Here is our first collaboration. The CBC recently covered a couple from South Carolina who moved to Halifax. Now, the CBC clearly considered this really big news. They did a whole long story on the couple, they took a lot of photos, they even made a little video about them for their YouTube page. In fact, this wasn't even the first time the CBC had reported on the couple. They did a whole other story on them back in June when they were merely planning their move. And in fairness to the CBC, they were not the only media outlet that covered this story. The tale of the couple that moved from South Carolina to Halifax was also picked up by CTV and the BBC, among others. Literally tens of thousands of people move to Canada every year. So what made this couple so special, so deserving of so much media attention? I think you can probably guess they hated Donald Trump. The notion of Americans fleeing Republican presidents to settle in Canada is one of the oldest cliches in the book. Every 4 years, American liberals love to make empty threats that if the Republican candidate wins, they will move up here. They did this with Bush, they did this with McCain, they did this with Romney, and now they're doing it with Trump. Most Americans don't take this kind of stuff very seriously, but Canadian liberals do. They love the idea that Republican presidents are so monstrously oppressive that Americans literally have no option but to physically flee their oppressive rule. And of course, they also love this idea that Canada is some wonderful, progressive, liberal wonderland with no problems. Considering how long the left has been in power here, that's very flattering to hear. It's basically Americans saying, "Good job, Canadian progressives, you've done everything right." But here's the problem. This whole thing about American liberals moving to Canada, it doesn't actually happen. The whole reason that South Carolina couple got so much attention was precisely because they were so rare. According to the 2016 Canadian census, there are just over 338,000 American-born people living in Canada. This is actually a pretty amazingly small number when you consider how lax Canada's immigration rules are and the fact that the United States is right next door. There are nearly twice as many Filipinos in Canada as there are Americans. There are more Africans in Canada than there are Americans. What is really interesting, however, is when you turn the tables. How many Canadian-born people are living in the United States? The answer, according to the US Migration Policy Institute, is over 783,000, more than double the number of Americans living in Canada. Recently, the average rate has been over 12,000 Canadians moving to the United States every year. In fairness, the number of Canadians moving to the US has actually declined in recent years. The numbers were highest when George W. Bush was president. Throughout the entirety of the Bush administration, the number of Canadians moving to America consistently exceeded the number of Americans moving to Canada, sometimes more than double. Of course, there's not much reason to believe the president has much influence one way or another why Americans move to Canada or Canadians move to America. People on this continent tend to migrate for primarily economic reasons, and because the United States is the bigger economy, it has historically proven the more attractive destination. But stories about economics are boring, while stories about politics are fun. So expect to hear a lot more about Trump refugees to Canada over the next 3 years, and a lot less about the much larger group of Canadians passing them in the other direction.